Welcome to Education Today. I'm Colton Miller of Armstrong Junior Senior High School in the Armstrong School District. Over the last several years, we have had visitors from our own school district, as well as guests from the county commissioners and county judges to representatives from Haven and Healthy Armstrong. Here at Education Today, we strive to bring our viewers at home a wide range of topics and organizations. This commitment allows the community to become more well-informed of the opportunities that are out there for them, as well as it allows the organizations that make up our community to spread the word about the things they have to offer. Tonight we continue the trend as we welcome a member of our local volunteer fire company in to talk about the organization. Welcome to Education Today.
Thank you.
Would you please introduce yourselves for our viewers?
Hello, my name is Tyson Klukin. I am from Fort City Hose Company number 1 down in Fort City, Pennsylvania. I am the vice president of the fire department along with the chaplain of the fire department. Been a firefighter since the age of 16, now making that 10 years in the fire service here.
What made you decide to become a volunteer fireman?
Well, actually, it's really interesting. I have 3 family members older than me that are firefighters. I had a female cousin, which was actually one of the first, if not the first, female firefighter in Fort City Hose Company number 1's history. Also, I have 2 uncles that were firefighters as well. So, being young and being around the firehouse and around the fire equipment and just hearing them talk about situations kind of brought me into the whole firefighting world. So that's what kind of brought me and made me involved in who I am today.
How would somebody go about joining?
It's interesting you ask that. Wanted to talk about that because me being 26 years old, I'm very young in the fire service. We're seeing a problem right now in the fire service in Pennsylvania. We're down to 70,000 volunteers when years ago there used to be a couple 100,000 volunteer firefighters across the state. But one comes into our fire station. We have an application process. It's a twofold, actually. We have a junior firefighter program, which we can touch a little bit later on. We also have a regular firefighter program, which is from the age 18 and up. How that whole process works is we go through background checks. We also do a health physical on them, and then the department will evaluate them and vote them in if possible.
What should a person know and understand about firefighting before they should consider joining?
Firefighting, actually, you need to have a lot of drive, mentally headstrong as well. You're going to be faced with a lot of life and death situations that can cause that post-traumatic stress syndrome. So kind of understanding how the fire service started, what type of fire calls these guys go to or females go to, and additionally, what kind of training is needed, because every average day working person or a young person is very busy. When I say, with schoolwork or regular work, and it takes a lot to become a firefighter. Right now, we're seeing about 275 to 300 hours of training needed just to have that basic essentials of firefighting. So.
Okay. What kind of training do they have to go through, and how often does it take place?
We'll touch back on the essentials of firefighting. Like I said, that's kind of your basic criteria, okay? 275 to 300 hours is the basic essentials of firefighting, which could lead into firefighting 1. And that's where a lot of, if you want to professionally be a firefighter, that's where a lot of the criteria is. They want you to be a firefighter 1. But the training that involves is hazardous materials, being able to understand and work with hazardous materials and hazardous situations, basic vehicle rescue and advanced vehicle rescue, to be able to cut people out of cars and extricate them in a proper fashion in the fire service. There's a rule called the golden hour rule from the time of the accident to the time that patient's taken to a major trauma center. And then also you have your general firefighting as well, understanding how fires start, what kind of materials are in, for example, this desk here, what the materials consist of, because that all plays into the physics of firefighting. So, like I said, it covers a lot within that 275 to 300 hours, but then there's advanced courses of firefighting, studying fires for arsonists, things like that. Also, to move along in advanced hazardous situations, to talk about extremely deadly chemicals. So there's a variety of education and training programs available to the volunteers here.
Are those free, or do you have to pay for those?
Sometimes they're free through your department. Other times you have to pay for them. But because we are volunteer, we go a lot through in Pennsylvania here. Butler County Community College has a great program. Also, in years past, we've used in Ford City Bucks County Community College out east. Those were charged by the college to the fire department, but at discount rates. So, yes, you have to pay for some training, but usually the company picks that up because you're putting your life on the line being a volunteer. So,
Okay. Typically, how many calls does the fire department respond to?
last year, actually in 2017, Fort City alone responded to about 250 to 260 calls. I'd say on average in the county it varies depending on the size of the area you cover by land. Also, the number of supporting fire departments you respond with, which is called mutual aid. So anywhere fire departments around here that respond to is probably about between 175 and 275. That's a good number to use. But like I said, back in Fort City, we went through 260, 275 calls last year. So
How has technology changed the fire service?
it's good that you ask here. I wanted to bring some information from Fire Rescue 1 and Fire Engineering. Those are sites out there for the firefighting world. Technology advancements have been very significant in really four categories. First is fire apparatus. We all know back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, you were having horse and buggy. Now you're seeing very high profile advanced vehicles. So right there alone, that modern technology and getting the firefighters safe to a scene is critical so we can take care of people. Secondly is the fire dynamics research, studying and understanding how fire starts, how fire spreads, how fire consumes materials inside of an environment is critical to understanding and how controlling a fire in the long run and teaching new firefighters. But also the knowledge with these variables grow as there is always called a fire triangle here in the fire world. You have chemical reactions with oxygen, and oxygen is fuels a fire. Just for some people who don't know that, so just the fire, like I said, the fire dynamics and the research alone. Number three would be self-containing breathing apparatus, or better known as SCBAs. Those are the breathing apparatus, those heavy breathing apparatus that you see on the back. They're about 30 to 40 pounds on top of your fire gear. Your overall fire gear, 70, 80 pounds sometimes on top of the normal body weight of a firefighter, which could range. But back to the SCBAs, those really didn't come along till the mid 50s, 60s, and 70s. And then they were starting to make major advancements using different cylinders. They used steel cylinders to keep the compressed oxygen in the tanks. Obviously, steel is very heavy, so now they have changed to like a polycarbon that can still go against the heat and fire and deadly chemicals and situations that we go in, but also it's a lot lighter. So they're trying to make these advancements of the electronics within the SCBA to tell you how much air you have, but also the fire manufacturers are trying to help the firefighters, professionally and in volunteer world, to lighten up the gear, to make the firefighters be able to work more efficient. So, yeah, like I said, the SCBA is definitely one of them. And the last one is thermal imaging cameras. Thermal imaging cameras is very cool. I used to work a lot with thermal imaging cameras in my professional life, working in the manufacturing world. But thermal imaging cameras, we can set different parameters on the thermal imaging screen. So if there's a fire behind a brick wall or a drywall or something, we can see the heat and we can see how hot it is. We can see if there's fire advancing up through the wall. That's one example. Another example is we've used thermal imaging cameras on vehicle accidents. If a patient gets ejected out into the roadway somewhere and it's a dark scene or over a hillside, that body heat of that person, we can switch our thermal imaging camera over to a missing persons mode, or just sensed by their body heat. You know, a normal person's body heat's in the upper 90s, so you can tell, and then you could see the outline of that person. We've been on calls before where thermal imaging cameras has helped find people, just missing persons in general. So they're evolving more and more, and now it's interesting that manufacturers are now putting these thermal imaging cameras on the self-containing breathing apparatus. So it's a 2-for-1 deal. And it's phenomenal because you can use that thermal imaging camera and cut down time. Instead of going to a fire truck to go get your thermal imaging camera, you can just have it right on your breathing apparatus inside a fire, look at a wall, it cuts down your time, and it might save the house. So those are just a couple major advances in the fire service alone.
Aside from what you've already mentioned, what are some of the dangers that the fire service is facing today?
Some of the dangers the fire service is facing is, one would not think this is a danger, but really is. In Western PA alone, actually Pennsylvania, like I said, we talk about a shortage of volunteers needed. Everybody's expecting, when you call 911, the fire department to show up. Sometimes that doesn't happen. Now, obviously, there's protocols for a neighboring department to respond to if your host municipality or fire department cannot respond to. But the one danger is the shortage of firefighters and the shortage of young people not being involved in the fire service, which is kind of really critical because, as a lot of firefighters will say, it's a young man's sport because you're going in a very hot, couple hundred to 1,000 degrees sometimes environment, but also you're logging around different heavy equipment that an older person, it has more of an effect on them. Another danger that we're seeing here in the fire service is, I want to talk about the materials and the new construction of homes, new construction of furniture, for example, from IKEA or other box stores. They're not making it out of like concrete, or they're making it a lot with I think polycarbons. And those polycarbons burn quicker, and they burn quicker, they burn hotter, which then makes the fire hotter. So that's we're seeing a danger in hotter fires. Another thing we're seeing in the fire service that's a danger actually is it's a twofold. With our firefighting gear, we have many layers in our fire gear. A triple barrier, they call it. But advancing further and further into a building, because we're not feeling that heat pushing down through our gear, we're advancing further in fires now. But that's a danger because if the conditions change rapidly, which through those polycarbons and the heating and the superheated gases, it's definitely a danger because we might lose firefighters now because firefighters are going in more and more into the building. So,
Do you have any advice for elderly adult fire injury and prevention?
We could talk about elderly and both, really. Just some safety fire tips. For the elderly, obviously they can't move around as quick as some young people, but fire is a very dangerous game. I call it a game because it changes and involves so much in such a quick time. But for elderly people, I would suggest that make sure you know your fire safety plan. If you live in a high rise, for example, know how to escape. Know where your fire escapes are. Know where the fire extinguishers are if you have to use them. Also, have smoke detectors. I mean, this is just not for the elderly. This is just for everyone. Have smoke detectors in every room, if not every other room, and be compliant, because I can't tell you how many times we've just been in new construction and a lot of places don't have fire or smoke alarms. And that obviously can save your life. Another thing is, we talked about having an emergency plan and an escape plan, but also have primary contacts. So once you go to that escape plan, because on fire scenes, they're very chaotic, okay? But to calm the situation down, have that, list of numbers for firefighters to call if someone would get injured that we could contact right away, give them an updated, because the way the social media world goes along anymore is things rapidly evolve and untrue facts are thrown out in social media, especially if people see or neighbors see a house fire, a vehicle accident. So, that the family talking to or the elderly talking to those firefighters or whoever in charge and giving those list of numbers, they can get the most accurate information. Just thinking about the elderly here, check on the elderly as well. And this is kind of not fire related, but it's related to just any time. Check on the elderly because more than they're having medical problems, okay? And the fire department does respond with the ambulances around and the medical crews around here. We have about 12 of them here in Armstrong County. But just to check on your neighbors, make sure everything's going okay, because there's times where the fire department has to assist the medics in assisting them in picking them up, picking their bodies up, or lift assists, because the people are just so fragile and they can't get up. So, those are some things we talk about with the elderly. But also, feel free to stop by the fire station at times. It's always good, or support their fundraisers. It's always good for the elderly or just the general population to see the face of the firefighters, because odds are when we're running in, you're running out. So, and it could be our last time. With our family, we don't know that, because like I said, the fire world is such a dangerous job. So,
Okay, we're going to take a short break. We'll be right back with Armstrong School District's Education Today. Stick around.
All your professors, all of them, they know that all it takes is one dreamer with passion, one person, and they hope in each of you that you might be that one who makes a longer-lasting light bulb, who writes music for the ages, who reaches into the mind and discovers a new star, and who can change the world of a fifth grader. We're gathered here to hope in you.
We're back with Armstrong School District's Education Today. Tonight we are talking about the Ford City Volunteer Fire Department with one of their members, Tyson Klukin. Does Ford City have a junior fire department?
Yes, Ford City actually does have a junior fire department. The fire department starts at the age of 14 to 16, and then 16 to 18, and then 18 you become a full-fledged member. There are some differences of the responsibilities of the junior program. 14 and to 16-year-olds, they really can't be on an active fire scene when reporting to a fire. They have to be on the second or third apparatus out of the fire station. There's parameters set by the Pennsylvania State Fire Commissioner's Office as well for junior fire department programs. And then also when you're in 16 to 18 years old, like I said, those differences are you're able to be on either the first or second piece of apparatus. It depends on what department you're with here in the county, but also you can do advanced firefighting on the outside of the building, not on the inside. You can work with some of the tools, but in certain scenes you're not allowed to be on, or you have to stay in the truck, and you can't do traffic control as well on major highways, but state other small roads you can. So those are just some of the differences, and yes, we do have the program there.
Since the junior firefighters can't go into the fire, what other duties do they have?
Like I said, I just kind of listed some of them above, but they're able to more stay outside than be inside. They have to stay close to the officer in charge or one of the line officers in charge of the scene or in the area, but also the regular firefighters, they have the authority to tell the other juniors, hey, I need a self-contained breathing apparatus or a CBA changed, go get the air bottle changed, can you clean up the equipment, roll the hoses on a fire scene, can you go put this piece of equipment back in the truck, just because after a heavy job, or heavy work here in the fire, they're tired, the regular firefighters are, the juniors can then assist. So they also help us a lot in Fort City with our fundraisers, which is an added bonus. So
let's get into the history of the Fort City Fire Service.
Mm-hmm.
When did the Fort City Fire Hose Company begin?
So it actually started in the year 1900. Captain John B. Ford built Pittsburgh Plate Glass Factory located in Fort City Borough, which supplied the primary fire protection to the residents of Fort City. PPG Fire Department consisted of a 13-man brigade of highly trained fire professionals using highly trained fire prevention and techniques. The fire department boasted over 800 pieces of fire suppression equipment, including hundreds of extinguishers and pool stations located through PPG Works 46 Shop 2. The company averaged about 6 to 12 small fires a year, which were quickly extinguished, with no major disruption to the plant. And also the town increased in its size from the start in 1887. So it became obvious there was a need for an increased protection within Fort City Borough, which met by members of Fort City Hose Company number 1 on the night of December 20th, 1900. Like I said, the group met in a session formed as Hose Company number 1 of Fort City, Pennsylvania, thus beginning the 100-year history. Now we're up to 118 years of our history. So we've been around a while.
Would you like to tell us about some of the major fires in the history of Fort City?
Yeah, sure thing. It's kind of interesting for the history junkies out there, but it's also interesting to know your history in the fire service in Fort City. Some of the major fires or emergency situations we had in Fort City here in the winter of 1889, the Fort City Opera House, which was in the downtown area, burned down. A new one was built and opened in 1901. Like I said, in 1900, in December, Fort City Fire Department was formed. December 12th of 1901, the Fifth Avenue Hotel burns for the first time. There was a fatality, and this was Fort City's known first fatality fire in the town history. 1904, Fort City Hose Company number 2 was formed. I never knew this till now when researching this in the prior days, but it's really interesting to know there was 2 fire stations and 2 fire departments. January 30th, 1909, Fort City had 2 fires at the same time, a duplex on Fifth Avenue and an old amusement hall that burned down, and those were never rebuilt from my understanding. In May 2nd of 1910, PPG Works 4 burned down, which caused $2 million in damage, and like I likened to earlier. In October 1913, a 1,500-pound fire bell was installed along with 10 fire alarm boxes. Those alarm boxes actually were a small breakable glass box that you could pull, and that would alert the fire department and make the whistles go off. So it's kind of really interesting to now where today we have pagers and our cell phones that set off for a call from 911. Jumping back into it though, in 1929, fire damages the first floor of Flynn's department store on Ford Street. Very major at the time because Flynn's, there wasn't no big box stores, like we have malls today. You shopped small business. So that was significant because a lot of people's supplies, clothing, just general stuff was in this department store from my understanding. In 1942, Ford City Hose Company No. 1 Ambulance Association was organized, which consisted of not paid EMTs or medics, but volunteer firefighters. In 1949, Arner's Warehouse fire occurred, and that was located along Fifth Avenue. In 1959, the Fifth Avenue Hotel fire, the second time, occurred. In 1963, Arner's Hardware caught fire again. Very frequent fires here at the Arner's Hardware store. 1974, the First Baptist Church burns down, to which later they have rebuilt their location. In 1976, Ford City buys its first rescue truck in Jaws of Life. It's pretty critical because Ford City, a lot of our calls are vehicle accidents or rescues, so it's very predominant today. In 1981, they removed the fire alarm systems due to the increase of false alarms and changing to the pager systems that I enlightened on earlier. In 1988, Ford City Ambulance Service was incorporated. In 1992, the Burdett Lumberyard fire occurred, which pulled 32 fire departments from Armstrong County and surrounding counties into Ford City, which they fought the fire for major hours. We're talking 12 to 18 hours at a time. In 2000, that was the 100-year mark of service. In 2008, the McNutt building caught fire, which was in downtown, and they did not build that building again. And here in 2011 and in 2018 now, we purchased newer fire apparatus, so we have a more secure and reliable fleet here in Ford City. So,
well, that's our show for today. I'd like to thank our guest, Mr. Tyson Klukin, a volunteer firefighter in Ford City and Ford City High School alumni. Our thanks goes out to the TV production students of Armstrong Junior Senior High School, led by their teachers, Mr. Don Swanson and Mr. Chris Garatano. They were our film crew today. Please join us again next week for another look at Armstrong School District. Visit our website for updated information about the district, and have a great week.